Hi, and welcome to another edition of Pillars of Heaven. This is your host, Dr. Myke. I'm in the studio today with my founders, JB. Hi, JB.
Hey.
And I have Leah, not Miss Leah, just Leah.
Hey.
Hi, Leah. And we have a special guest today, and that's one of Leah's good friends, so I will have Leah introduce her. Go ahead, Leah.
Okay. Hey, everybody. I just want to welcome to the show Miss Mimi Freed.
Hello, everybody. I'm Miss Mimi. I'm so happy to be here.
Hey, welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you, Mimi.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Yeah, I've known Mimi probably for about, how long, Mimi? A year?
It's a year.
Yeah, just coming on a year. We go to church together. And I just want to say that Mimi is an awesome person. I was telling the guys here that that she is like a mom to everybody at the church that we go to. Anytime I look at you, Mimi, you're hugging somebody, including me, and like loving on people, and you're just amazing. And you have a really heartbreaking but amazing story that we'd love for you to share with us.
Oh, yes, I do. And I appreciate that, Leah. My father always said they should have probably named me Joy because he always said that I bring people joy. So that's a good thing.
Yes, you do.
Mm-hmm. I'll take that. If that's my gift from God, then I'll take it. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So my story is interesting. I am the baby of 7. I was raised in an Irish Catholic family. So that automatically tells you that I'm a little nuts. Just giving you a little info. But yeah, so, I was raised in my faith. I've always had a very close relationship with God, but I had something happen in my life that I never realized until this time what a really close relationship with God can be. And that experience was on 8/13 of 2016, my only child, 20 years old, he was a month away from his 21st birthday, took his own life, and he committed suicide. Now, a lot of people want to know why, and I'm going to tell you why. The reason why is because his mother and his father failed him. And when I say that, what I'm saying is we did not devote our marriage, our lives, and our child to God. And because of that, the enemy won. Now, I have learned through this that marriage is a very difficult thing. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean that all marriages are successful. That's definitely something that's real. But it is imperative that even if the marriages do not survive, because biblically there are reasons to divorce. That's absolutely the truth. But it is also important that we raise our children properly and we raise them in the Lord. And that when they run into problems, rather than us solving them, we teach them. We teach them how to walk in Christ. Because really, the lesson that we all need is that when you have a problem in life, no matter what that problem is, whether you're having financial issues, whether you're having trouble finding a job, or whatever it is, the only person who's truly going to give you the answer you need is our Father.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And if we walk our life like Jesus, and we go to our Father when we are in even a small situation, it doesn't have to be huge, but when we take it to Him, the answers come, and it really is that simple.
Yeah.
Right.
It's that simple. And when, by this experience, I realized that when my son was going through struggles, I was doing that prayer of, all right, I'm going to make a deal. So I'm going to do this, this, and this, and this if you make my son better. Mm. Or I was doing just put it on me, I'll take it, just take it away from him, which is not a possibility, right?
Right.
So it was just a Hail Mary prayer. It was just, throwing that football and hoping somebody caught it. Mm-hmm. And it's not what God wants. Right. That's not what He's looking for. I never gave gave it up. I never truly developed that relationship with our Father and said, Father, my son, your child needs help. Mm-hmm. And, we might be talking a different story right now had I possibly done that. But here's the thing. People are going to learn from this, and that's a very important issue. But through this, I actually, at one point, 2 years after my son's suicide, I was so distraught and fallen into the dark. And I have always been somebody who's warned people about the dark. It's tough to stay in the light. It's not an easy job, but if you turn to that dark, it will swallow you in seconds.
Yeah.
Right.
And I turned to the dark, and I closed myself off from the world, which is exactly what the enemy wanted. Mm-hmm. And I allowed him to speak in my ear. And what I did was I went to the hotel, right, that I could see where my son died. And I went in there. No one knew where I was. No one knew. And I went in there and I said, God, the only way I'm ever going to see my son again is if I commit suicide.
Oh, wow.
So I took over 500 pills, prescription and non-prescription. I drank 2 huge bottles of wine. I drank 2 huge bottles of cough medicine.
Oh, my.
Oh, wow.
And I was very sick, and I eventually passed out. They broke into the hotel room because I was supposed to be checked out. They got me to a hospital, and I woke up in the hospital realizing I didn't succeed. And they told me that if I lived to see the next day, I was going to need a liver transplant.
Oh, wow.
So I said, okay, here we are. And during that time in the hospital, every person that was on one-to-one with me because of having a suicide attempt,
Right.
every single person that came to be with me lost a child in some capacity.
Oh, wow.
Now, we all know that's the work of our Father.
Sure.
Yeah.
So then from there, I knew immediately, and right down the hall from where I was in the hospital on the other side was exactly where my son, his life was completed and his organs were donated. So this was not an accident. This whole thing brought me to my knees. And let me just say that although they said my liver was so bad I was going to need a transplant, by the first antidote treatment, my liver was completely healed.
Oh,
Wow.
Yeah, that whole thing was the work of God.
Absolutely.
Just surviving that attempt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's a serious attempt. That's 500
Yes.
pills.
Oh my
and-
gosh, yeah.
Yeah, that's
And all
Yes.
the alcohol.
wow.
And
Yeah.
I knew then I have to do something. And I had to go into a hospital because obviously secular world is, this is what they do.
Right.
So I had no choice. They sent me down to Philly and I had to get, but it's funny if you met the people there, they're like, you're not the person who comes here, because I was, just like Leah said, I was taking care of everyone there. If I saw that if I felt they, didn't have enough on their plate to eat, I'm cutting up my food and giving them more food. I was, just kind of being that mother. And they're like, you're supposed to be here to take care of you.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's just not who I am. And it was an eye-opening experience because I saw what happens there. And I know that was the point of it. God said, you need to know what goes on here, because this is the secular world. When we leave here, I'm going to show you what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And the healing began. And it was absolutely amazing. It's been my walk in the wilderness. It's definitely my 40 years. It's no question. But it is amazing how much I have learned. It is astounding how close I have come to our Father. I never thought it was possible.
Wow,
Never.
that's well, inspiring for one. And it's tragic also.
Yes.
I mean, how do you, if you could tell somebody listening now that's suffering with that depression or that's going through the loss of a child, because suicide itself is a topic that we touch on here, but we're going to really dig into at some point, because we all believe here that it's running rampant, and it's
it's a pandemic.
Yes,
it's the real pandemic.
Yeah, and I as a father myself, I can't imagine going through that, or going through and how to get yourself out of, okay, well, there's nothing else to live for because that's it. You know what I mean? Like, how do you deal with that tragedy? I mean, what can you specifically tell them, or somebody that's listening? How do you put that one foot in front of the other day by day?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So take us back to 2018, Mimi, right? When you started seeing the healing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So well, let's go back further, because
Okay.
when this happens, your world is pulled out. I mean,
Right.
the rug was pulled out from you. And, I was an unusual situation because single mom, so I don't have a spouse to lean on, right? It's my only child. So I don't have to make sure that everyone else is okay.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't
Yes.
have to worry about the siblings who are having to deal with this.
Right.
So in my situation, it's a little bit different. So when people are, when it's the couples that are still together and this is happening, what I've learned is they either come closer together or
they blame
marriage
each
is
other.
over.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
It's one extreme or the other, because they're going to either blame one another and and that's going to be it, or they're just going to come together and say, I need you more than I've ever.
Right.
Right.
A lot of people say to me, well, when it happened to me, I had my other son, and it's not like having a spare tire.
Right.
That doesn't help. And, but I think it forces them to keep going. Right. So it pushes people along. Because you're like, look, I have to take care of this child. This is my obligation. And, even like the worst parent is just going to at least feel obligated.
Right.
But when you're really invested in your children, you have that wonderful relationship, it's devastating. And my son and I were very, very close. So I didn't know how to live. I didn't know how to get up and like cook and just be me, because I spent 20 years of, him and his friends and everybody else. And
he was
and
your
all of a sudden
world.
it's over.
Yeah.
It's over. It's not the empty nest of my kids going to college.
Right.
It's game over. So, and I do want to share really quickly what's going on in Ukraine right now with these families all being split. I can't help but think of them right now, because these parents are experiencing a very different loss, because there's kids here and then there's parents over there, and nobody knows if they're all losing one another, and they don't know if the other's alive or if they're not. So just on a side note, we need to really commit them to prayer. But
Amen.
Moving forward here, it's really hard, but it goes to what I said in the very beginning. If you have a problem, whether it is big, whether it is small, take it to God. Leave it at his feet.
Amen.
Cry, weep. Do not hold it in. I was trying to be strong for everybody. You need to yell. You need to scream.
Right.
You need to get it out of your body. And you're not yelling at God.
I was just going to ask
He
you that.
understands.
Yeah.
Right.
You're
Yes, he
getting
does.
that emotion out.
Right.
And there's a difference. And, and even if you do say, why?
Yeah.
That doesn't really mean, and, a lot of us have the why. I knew my son's why, and and I knew it was because of my separation, and I knew that he wanted to spend time with his father, and his father did not spend time with him. I knew that. And no matter how good of a life I gave him, this was problem. And this was always where it went.
That was a void for him.
It was a void, right.
It was. It was, and that's why, family, there are going to be divorces, but we have to stick together for our children.
Right.
Yes.
And we have to take them to God. We have to commit them and their problems and everything else to God, because I'm sure I think everyone here on this panel knows, and I'm sure most of the population knows, the maturity of the human brain doesn't fully happen until the age of 25. So the decision-making factors, the emotions do not mature until then. So it's imperative that they're taught that this is where it has to go, and they need to know it then, because this is where the answers come, and this is when they're not going to be so, they're going to have more armor, and they're going to be more guarded against the enemy, because they don't believe the enemy's going to get them. Right. They don't believe they're going to get in a car accident. They don't believe they're going to get hurt. When I was young, I was the same way.
You think you're invincible.
They think, yes, I'm very
and
well
it's just they don't think that. So, but they think they're invincible. But now our teens especially, and again, these people who are thinking they're very adult, and in this world today are living very adult lives, are also having to do all of this with an immature brain.
Yeah.
Their brain is not there for them to make these decisions. So they're making a final decision that cannot be undone.
Well, and I also think, they're it's not just that their brains are not fully developed, that they're being bombarded with a society that tells you that now it's more accepted than ever to just take the out, because it's like, oh, if you can't deal with it, well, this is the loss of hope in a young person is very powerful. And
absolutely.
And I think that now more than ever, when you think back 40, 50 years ago, or a different generation, when you talked about suicide, it was like, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas now everyone's like, I know people that have committed suicide. I have a ton of friends that have dealt with it. And it's a lot of young people, and it comes down to them. What I was trying to say, the other generation, it just wasn't an option for them. You know what I mean? It wasn't like a sought out alternative to, well, if you can't handle this, then don't. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So,
and in 2022, the solution, it's like, hey, I have a problem. You know what? Let's just end it, because then the problem goes away.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And and a lot of people don't realize too that these kids are thinking, well, I am a problem.
Yeah.
So if I take this away, then I'm not going to disappoint mom and dad, or I'm not going to, and then there's this whole weird, bizarre thing that's going on social media where everyone's so brave behind a keyboard, where they're actually saying to one another, why don't you just go kill yourself?
That's crazy.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, this is insane.
Yeah.
I think also, not to get too sidetracked, I think that our culture has been conditioned for death ever since the pandemic shutdown, with people being isolated. I really feel for the people that had nobody, no family, when they were forced to stay in their homes.
Yeah.
And I think back to over a decade ago when I was going through a severe depression, and I couldn't imagine being in their shoes and not being able to see anybody, family that didn't want to see you because they were afraid. And and I just kind of kickstarted it all, between the suicides and the depressions and people dying from COVID. And
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what, the one thing that really bothers me, it's funny, a real trigger for me, I get so upset, are these masks. These masks are the act of the enemy. There's no question in my mind, because it's such a great way to hide. It really keeps people hidden. It keeps them, it's a visual way of keeping people at bay.
It takes their identity away.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I do not like it at all. It's, not being able to see somebody smile and, things like that. It's just not okay.
It's a muzzle too.
It is.
You notice someone brought it up one time a while back. It actually, someone said it's to silence people. Well, if you noticed, whenever we were all forced to wear those masks, people talked less.
Yeah.
They didn't socialize as much.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Even texting took on a whole new life. And, the phone calls just kind of went away. That's crazy.
Yeah.
We're already isolated enough.
Yeah.
By our cell phones and, computers and televisions and everything else. We don't need more isolation.
Yeah.
This is not okay. And of course, let's just also take into effect here, because you guys had asked me, what do you tell people, what advice?
Yeah.
The best advice I can give anyone: get to your church, get to your pastor, get to your knees, and just keep doing it. And stick with the people who are going to help you through, because even your blood might not be the one who's going to help you.
Yeah,
right.
Correct. That's a great point.
Okay?
Yeah.
Stick with your Christian fellow brothers and sisters who are walking in Christ, because that is the way. Because you have to take it to God, but you need their support. And some of them may have experienced it. They might not share it with you, but they may know what it feels like. And then there's others that do not know. They haven't lived it, but you know what? They have their faith. And that combination, that's going to keep you in the light. That's going to keep the enemy at bay. You're going to have all these people praying for you to keep the enemy, because it's the easiest time to take you down.
Yeah.
Right. And to isolate when you're hurting like that bad, you want to isolate.
Yes.
Yeah, you do.
It feels like the right thing, because you don't want to be a burden.
Right.
And, you don't want to be, everyone having to worry about you and everything else. And then every little thing you do and say, and, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. And, it can be a hassle. But honestly, if you have a church, go there. If you have a pastor, go there. If you don't, find one, because I promise you these people will help you. It's
Ms.
definitely
Mimi,
the answer. Yes.
I wanted to ask you, and I pretty much I kind of know the answers to this already, because just of my own life experiences, but for the sake of everyone listening that could be going through this too, do you suffer through do you go through peaks and valleys, good times and hard times? Because I know you sound very hopeful and you're close to the Lord, but we still are in this human flesh, and we do go through valleys.
Oh, there's no doubt. So just so you guys are aware, I have definitely gone through some serious I'm not always this perky, happy Miss Mimi. I like to be as much as possible, and God has given me that gift, which I'm very thankful for. However, yes, there's just times. I had the other day, I just was at work, I can't even tell you what it was, because I don't know. I don't know if it was a smell, if it was something, but something hit just a certain way. And I just missed my kid.
Yeah.
I just missed my kid. Yeah. And I just had tears rolling down my face. And I had to just get up and walk away. And then I've had other times where I had to, I felt like I was going to crawl out of my own skin. And I was like, I'm overwhelmed, and I'm right now going through I'm still in that wilderness a little bit. I was left basically homeless, and I've been living in a hotel for the last 10 months.
Oh, wow.
Life has not been easy since this happened with my son. And, having to regroup after my suicide attempt and everything else, it's been a struggle. If it wasn't for my church, if it wasn't for my church family, them checking on me, them texting me, we have a special page that is private on Facebook. It's literally the only thing I go to. And sometimes just when, it's the middle of the night, I'll just be on there reading different things because it just brings me back. And I have people now that I can really go to and rely on. So my valleys are not nearly as bad as they once were.
Yeah.
And they are getting better. But yes, you run into, it's just a week ago was the anniversary.
Right.
So it was a very tough day. The anticipation of it coming is horrible. I think about what we were doing up until that point. And then that day, I'm just kind of indifferent.
Right.
And this past Saturday, I had a lot of healing. I was cleaning at my church, and I just was very quiet. And I had some Christian music playing, and I was just doing my thing, and God was speaking to me. And it was a warm, quiet healing this time. And because I stayed the course and walked through it as opposed to going around it this time. And next year, who knows? I might walk around it. I don't know. I can't promise you anything.
Right.
Because this is going to be with me for the rest of my life. And it doesn't go away. But I do use it as a vessel to help people as often as I can.
You know what? And that's something I actually just wrote down here was just imagine the people that you can help, because it's a big difference between me trying to help somebody and telling them my thoughts about it and somebody like you
as well
telling them that have actually put those shoes on and walk that mile. Right. So you being able to help other people in that situation is super important.
I agree. And, the window is huge because I can help the parent.
Right.
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 I can be there to just hug them, hold them, let them talk, validate, and say what you're feeling. That's normal.
Yeah.
Just keep doing it.
Yeah.
Get through it. I have been, Leah knows I've done childcare and elder care since I was 10 years old, and I'm 55 years old now. And so I've touched a lot of lives in that capacity. And those kids know, you come to Miss Mimi, you call Miss Mimi. Yeah. I'll get up, I'll go wherever you need me to be. I don't care what it's going to take. I will come get you. And, and not only that, I've had strangers who are like, just feel comfortable, and they'll just start talking to me. It's crazy. Yeah. And they'll just start spilling out their story to me, and I just will just hug them and let them talk. And then I tell them, I lost my son, and I'm sure that your parents don't want to lose you. Yeah. This isn't a solution to a problem. So God uses it very often, and some of the most bizarre situations. And it's, just for example, just the other day, I was driving home from work. I left work much earlier than I would have normally, and there was a traffic jam. And noticed there was a 3-car pileup on the side of the road. And when I passed, I turned, and I thought the boy that was there was one of the women from our church. I thought it was her son. And I was on the phone with a friend of mine. I said, a kid of mine is in an accident. One of my kids is in an accident. I got to go. I hang up. I pull over. I run out of the car, and I'm yelling, Jaden, Jaden, Jaden. And he looks up at me. He goes, I'm not Jaden. And I looked at him. I'm like, oh, my gosh, you're not. But God made me see Jaden. Yeah. And I just turned and ran. And I went up. And that child, 18-year-old, just jumped into my arms. I mean, he literally just leapt at me. Wow. He was shaking. He was crying. He was distraught. And I looked, and the car that he had rammed into had 2 children in car seats in the back.
Oh,
wow.
And he said to me, I said, I'm Miss Mimi. I'm here to help you. And he said, Miss Mimi, please check on those children. Now tell me, does that not show you the heart of that child that was standing there?
Wow.
Yeah.
All he wanted was for me to make sure that those children were okay. So I went over, and the mother was screaming at this boy and say, you could have killed my children. It was, I realized she was very upset. Okay, so, I'm like, it's okay, ma'am. Your children are okay. Let's just have you stay over here. Let me stay over here with him, and we'll get the police. So I stayed with him. He was shaking.
yeah.
Right.
I mean, he was completely distraught. And I'm still in contact with him. I'm still in contact with his family, because he had said 2 weeks before that, he had a major car accident where he was a passenger. He had a concussion. Wow. So when he was on this road, he was already scared. When this traffic jam happened, he freaked out. He didn't know what to do because he's an inexperienced driver.
Right.
Huge accident, and now he's terrified, and he's all upset because COVID, lockdown, the car accident, and he goes, everything is horrible. Everything goes wrong. You can't get... And I'm just praying.
Yeah, I can't imagine being a young person right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And to hear him, how desperate he was, I mean, it's been amazing. I mean, he just, and then when his parents took him to the hospital, they were texting me from the hospital, letting me know how he was doing. The next day, his first reaction was to reach out to me and thank me.
Wow, Mimi, that's
and I
amazing.
said, that wasn't me. That wasn't me. I know you think that was me, but all the glory goes to God, because he is the one who brought me to you.
Right.
Wow.
And he knows what you needed. And I got to tell you, when I left there, I got back home, I was weak in the knees, because I could literally feel God saying, I think we saved this one from trying to do the inevitable of trying to commit suicide. I am telling you, this kid was that shaken.
Wow.
And it was just beautiful. And he's still, he's going off to college. He's like, Miss Mimi, I'm packing up and getting ready to go to college. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to be praying for you. And,
Oh my gosh.
so
Wow.
it's nice to have this little, I don't know him at all, but his heart was shown to me by God, and I saw that this is just another one of God's babies who is suffering as a result of pandemic, as a result of the world we're living in right now. And just, you could see that he was automatically going to, I can't take it anymore.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And that's not a solution.
No.
Right.
And they need to learn the solution. And pandemics are closing churches, taking those solutions away.
And further isolating people.
Right.
Exactly.
And the whole shutdown with the whole Zoom movement, I mean, it just made people lazy, because how many people are still doing it now that they are able to get back together?
Exactly.
So that's further isolation than we already were before.
And that's what the enemy wants.
Isolation,
that is
for sure.
Fuel for the enemy. Yeah. That's not God's way.
Yeah.
That is not God's way.
But
and we have to rise above it.
Miss Mimi, going back to about the peaks and valleys, because I wanted to touch on the valleys again, because I really think this is important for people to hear, because I think sometimes people believe that when somebody follows the Lord and Christ is their Savior, that they're automatically like everything is just great and
all sunshine
and there's no problems.
Yeah.
And I know from experience that that's not true. And I have fallings away, when I sin, and then there's times when I feel like I'm standing on a mountain and everything's great, and then sometimes I feel like I'm down in a ditch in the miry clay, and I feel like sometimes that not all hope is lost, but pretty darn close. Yeah. And one thing that in my own experiences, and I'm going to let you touch on this, one thing in my own experiences is that I know in my mind the enemy wants us to isolate ourselves, to walk away.
Right.
even after you sin. But I tell myself, no, I'm going to keep on doing what I'm doing. I'm going to keep cracking open my Bible and reading it and keep praying. And I feel like those times in my life, I almost feel like God that Jesus is grabbing me by the back of my shirt and dragging me through the situation. And that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
It happens.
He's willing to do it.
Yeah.
He's willing to do it. No, and that's the truth. So I'll give you an example of a valley, and Leah can attest to this because Leah has actually witnessed it with me, and Leah was part of the reason I came out of my valley. So I think this is very appropriate to talk about here because she's going to be able to, weigh in on this as well. So I had, even before I ended up homeless and having to move into a hotel, I was really going into some tough times, and I was kind of, I was really feeling it. I was really trying to face my son's death and trying to face what I had to deal with and try to be the best Christian, and I was failing, and I was stuck in that mindset of what you're talking about of, well, a real Christian is like perfect, and I'm not perfect. I'm horrible. I'm messing up like crazy, and I'm just supposed to be horrible. So I would get into these moments where I would just be constantly crying, and I really had some moments where the floodgates just opened and I couldn't stop them. I just couldn't stop them. And every time I would go to church, I had it in my head that when I would say something like, I'm just really upset about my son and, everything about my son and in my mind, the enemy is whispering, they just rolled their eyes at you. Right. They're sick of hearing it. They're done. They're done. They think you're just being a jerk. You need to get over it.
Yeah,
and this is what
lies.
The enemy is feeding.
Yeah.
And so that's why I would pull away. Had it not been for the Leahs and the Joannas and the Bobbies and who kept pulling me.
Right.
Just like you said, Jesus pulled you.
Yeah.
They were reaching at Mimi, don't do this. Don't do this. I see where you're going.
Right. Don't believe the lies.
You need to come to church. Yeah.
And don't stop. So that's interesting that you said that you need to come to church, so that you were thinking, you actually kind of answered the question I was getting ready to ask. So you were thinking about isolating yourself.
Yes.
And it's almost like you were saying to yourself that I'm not worthy enough to go to church, because it's almost like you were going back on your dedication to the Lord.
Exactly.
See, that's what I wanted you to share with everybody, because people need to understand that you've gone through this and you're still going through it. It's a journey. Yes.
Right.
But people need to know that so that they don't lose hope, so that if they have a day where they feel very distant from the Lord or they feel like they've lost all hope, that to keep on going even when you feel like you're not going anywhere.
Exactly. And, Leah and our friend Joanna actually expressed to me, and it's something that stayed with me and means the world to me. They said, despite it all, Mimi, you never missed church. You kept coming Wednesday nights. You kept coming on Sunday, even though it was because they saw it, and I'm sure Leah will tell you, I didn't want to go.
Yeah.
Right.
I didn't want to because the enemy was in my ear.
Yeah.
They don't want you. They don't want to deal with this anymore.
Accuser of the brother.
Yes.
That's what he does. Yeah.
And Leah was there with me the one Wednesday night when I actually isolated. It was only a small group, but I isolated myself from the group.
I remember that prayer meeting. Yeah.
Yes. And I sat away and I just was weeping. And people would come over. Can I help you? Nope, leave me alone. Nope, leave me alone. And I just kept telling them to leave me alone. And I'm pretty sure, Leah, you were probably praying for me to come over, because I ended up coming over and I sat right next to Leah, and she put her hands on me and was praying nonstop for me the whole time. Pastor looked at me and he goes, "What's going on, Mimi?" And I couldn't even speak.
Yeah.
I said, "I don't know."
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And because that was how bad the struggle was. I didn't have words.
Right.
Yeah.
All I had were tears. I didn't have words. I was so distraught. And they just sat there with me.
Yeah.
But that's amazing that God used people to pull you into those events, the church events, because
Yes.
Just you being there, you might feel like you weren't really making any progress at the time, but
absolutely.
the enemy wanted to isolate you. He wanted you to just say, "No, I'm not going anywhere and doing anything," and then he can further torment you.
Right.
Absolutely.
And then we get inside of our own heads and we start beating ourselves up and we feel like we're not worthy of God's presence, or we feel like
cycle. Yeah.
The problem is I think a lot of times we dictate our lives, at least the flesh side of us, we dictate our lives by how we feel, and that's a very dangerous compass to use.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
And I'm not saying I'm guilty of this, I'm guilty of it.
Yeah, me too.
But I try to remind myself, even if I don't feel in touch, spiritually one day or another, I still go about reading the Bible and praying, because we can't use our feelings as a way of.
No, they lie to us all the time.
Oh yeah,
yeah, yeah, they do.
Yeah. And the enemy will use anything as a tool.
Yes, yes, because he doesn't have a very big arsenal. He really doesn't. He uses the same things, but they work so well. Why would he stop?
Yeah.
So he doesn't need a very big arsenal. He's able to utilize this, and it's working. It's working for him. And, we have adults who are buying into this, and then they're selling it to their children. And, it's, our children are really getting lost.
Yes, they are.
This is where I'm most heartbroken, because, it's one thing for an adult to make a choice, and okay, if that's how you want to live your life, I'm sorry. I'm just going to pray that you turn it around. But having been the person who has done hospice and elder care, I can assure you that when people reach their end of life, if they have not gone to Christ, I have yet to see one person. I have seen people who are dead set against church, God, you name it. But when they are there and they know it's about to happen, the first words out of their mouth are, "God, help me."
Yeah.
And I have witnessed it myself. I have shared this with many people, and it's just, and even those kids who are feeling suicidal, who are feeling unloved, who are feeling hopeless, even they are talking to God.
Yeah.
But they're listening. They're talking to God, but they're listening to the enemy. And this is where this ends up getting really messed up. And this is because they don't know how to listen. Everybody knows how to just say, "God, I need you right now. I had too much to drink. I'm throwing up. I'm so sick. If you save me, I'll never drink again." And then tomorrow night you're drinking, right?
Right.
Everybody does that one, right? Everybody does that one. And that's what they're doing in that moment. They're like, "God, if you'll just step in and take this away, I won't do it anymore." But they don't realize that that's not the prayer, because no one taught them.
Yeah.
Right.
So the enemy knows, "Oh, that's the prayer I was looking for. He's going to be easy to get. She's going to walk right into my vessel. I'm just going to tell her, yeah, no, he closed that door. Come on, come over here." And that's the problem. We need to keep our children safe. We need to keep, I'm not saying that they're not going to get divorced, but we need to keep family. We need to get back to community. We need to get these children protected by the blood of Jesus, by being in their church community, by being in their family community, and being surrounded by people who love them. So when trouble comes, they have more than one person to reach out to. And they need to be taught. We as adults need to be showing them. And I failed. I failed at this. And I know I failed at this. And so that's why for me, I know this is very important. I just spoke with my ex-husband recently over the last weekend, because we always talk over the time of JJ's death. We always talk. And he's having a very difficult time with it as well. It has brought him back to the Lord as well. And he is ministering to people in prison and telling these men, go be with your children. I don't care about the baby mamas. Go be with your children.
Yeah.
Okay, which is huge. That's huge. He's doing this. And he has devoted his life to his faith again, which is fantastic. And, he's got my support, my prayers all the time. So we were talking, and, he always says, Mimi, this is my fault. This is all my fault. And I'm like, you cannot take this burden.
Right.
This is you and I. And I said, in all honesty, and this is what I just shared with him, when we were still married, and you fell short, and when you were the leader, I let you be the leader of our house. But when you stepped back and you let that leadership go, that onus was put on me, and it's biblical. I was then supposed to step up and take that lead until you came back. And then as soon as you came back, then I was to step back. And that's what marriage is. That's what being submissive is. And that's very important. Submissive is a word that's being misconstrued. And it's a very strong, powerful, good word that's misunderstood. And if we take on that role as the husband, as the wife, as the mother, as the father, and we take that seriously, and we act on it through Jesus, guess what? Our kids are going to still have peaks and valleys.
Right.
But boy, are they going to be stronger. They're going to be able to fight now, because we're going to teach them, we got a problem. We need to get on our knees. Hands up, knees down. We need to do this, because the only way is Yahweh. We have to go to him. And if we do this, this is what they're going to do. And this is what they're going to teach their children. Will they possibly walk away from it when they're older? That's an option. God gave us free will.
Right.
We have to give our children free will.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And while that may sound very simple, it actually is. And I didn't do it. And neither did my husband. And, here I am now saying, let's make a difference in who's here. Because I can't change what was done.
Right.
But now I know.
Yeah.
And, sometimes the best lessons are from the mistakes.
Yeah.
True indeed.
God uses all of this. My faith, my walk, my scripture is, I love Ephesians 6. I love the armor of God. It's my absolute favorite. I can't get enough of it. But the other one is definitely John 15, verse 5. I am the vine. You are the branches.
Yeah.
You within me and I within you. It's amazing what can be done, right?
Yeah.
So if you, and he says plainly, without me, you're nothing.
Right.
Right.
Without me, you are nothing. And it's true, because this is our solution. And this is our way to help our children. And we, as, now I don't have my child, and I am not, I'm not a mother, right? But as Leah said,
Yes, you are.
I'm very motherly. And I take that role very seriously, and I extend that to people all the time. Because that's a gift that God has given me. That's all God. That's not me. That's the Jesus in me that God gave me. And he said, here's what I want you to do. And I do it. And I do it often. And I love it because every time I do, I'm stronger in my faith.
And I know, Miss Mimi, that you blamed yourself. You accepted the failure on your part for what happened. But I just want to say, though, that there's a lot at work. The enemy is hard at work on the children today, and there's so many attacks from all different angles on children. It is so much harder to be a parent these days, raising kids in the way of the Lord.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
And I'm going to use as an example the entertainment that's presented to children.
Yes.
It started with it started way before this, but it's with Harry Potter and all the books and the movies, and there's so much like entertainment out there about witchcraft and wizardry and sorcery, and it's in all of it's laced throughout the entertainment.
And I fell into that too.
And I just want to say that, I know you accept it, that you failed, but I don't want you to beat yourself up too hard on this because, like I said, the enemy is so hard at work. There's so many things that are outside of our control. Yes, we can try to monitor what our children do, but there's still ways for them to slip through the cracks with the media just bombarding everybody with garbage.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's so subtle. It's so subtle how it's done.
Oh, yes, absolutely. No, I agree with you. And it was part of my healing. For me, it was just accountability of being able to see it. The enemy is not at work in that one. He was for a while. For me, it's in helping people in their marriage and kind of saying to them, you know what, don't walk away from your marriage, especially if your problems are really very small.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Stick with it and just take the reins while your spouse is maybe going through a rough patch, and then let them take those reins back. But the best healing for me, and even with the healing, still have the peaks and valleys, and I'm going to have them. 10 years from now, I'm going to have them.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? There's no question. But the biggest healing was when I went to my Father, our Father, and I said, God, please forgive me. And that was the hardest thing for me because I didn't want to have to say that. And the picture that I have in my mind is me kneeling down with my head down, tears streaming down my face, saying, please forgive me, Father. I didn't mean to harm my son. I didn't mean to do wrong. I was trying, and I'm pouring my heart out to him. And God, in his love, his unbelievable love, was standing over me with his hand on my back, and he lifted up my chin and he said, you're already forgiven. You just have to forgive yourself.
Right.
You have to let this go. You didn't do anything purposely to harm anyone. And it's a visual for me that is an action of a parent. When you have a child who did something wrong because they're going to do things wrong, what do? We hug them, we console them, and we teach them, right? And that's exactly what he did to me. And through that, I was able to really find healing. And it might sound silly, but it really is true. And I can actually, as I'm talking, I can still see the visual.
That's beautiful.
It doesn't sound silly. Yeah, no.
It's and those tears are healing. He collected every one of them. He kept them all, and he's going to use every one of those tears for something good. So it's not a matter. I've passed the beating myself up stage.
Yeah.
Because I was able to forgive myself. But let me tell you, that's a really rough thing to do.
I'm sure. I can't imagine.
It's really hard. And so I don't know if any of you guys have ever seen The Passion of Christ.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
The movie.
For sure. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's such a beautiful movie. And what captured me all those years ago when my son was very young was the segment where Jesus is carrying the cross and he drops to his knees and Mary is watching him and she sees him fall as a child.
Yeah,
And her heart
they show like the flashbacks, right?
Yes. That spoke to me. I couldn't even catch my breath the first time I saw that scene. Because I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot imagine what Mary went through. Okay. And let me just share one other really important facet.
And I think people forget, I'm sorry to interrupt, I think some people forget that they were very much human.
Yeah.
And
right.
Because we read the stories of the Bible and, we read about, Jesus Christ. And I said before in another episode that the Bible is summarized. So it leaves out a lot of like all the nitty gritty. Like they were actually
kind of thing.
They were real people. Jesus was a carpenter. He built things for people. And Mary
was
and
his
Joseph.
mother,
Yeah.
She
loved them. And just like any mom loves her children.
Right.
And they leave all those details out, and I guess it's left to us to kind of like understand, like they were people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And people always say it was the greatest story ever told. They're like, it's a story. And I'm like, well, yeah, so is the story of my family. When I tell you a real story that happened of something in my family, that's a story.
Right.
But it happened.
Right.
Right.
That they're almost saying like it's not real,
like a fairy tale,
story.
but it's not
Yes.
right.
And that's not the case. But yeah, and even in that movie, they'll show where he was building a table, and then he calls to his mother to come and see it, and come check it out. I know. See, I like that too.
Yeah.
And what you're saying, it brought that humanness
Right.
to them, and I love that because that is what's missing biblically. Is you feel the emotion in Psalms, you feel it in Proverbs, but you don't really get the emotion, so to speak. And if you've gone to Sight and Sound, they're very good about gaining the emotion. Yes. They get the emotion. They bring the emotion to David, and they, carry it right into the crowd, and it's beautiful.
Right.
But yeah, and that, I think you're right. I think that's forgotten too.
Yeah.
Like, these stories, and they're so old. Those stories are so old, but they're still pertinent today.
Oh yes.
Right.
Yep.
The woman at the well. I'm sorry. There's how many women at the well right now?
Right.
I can think of 10 people immediately, right? And I think we've all been there. We're they're all talking about me. They're all I'm isolated.
Pointing their fingers. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many people who you can Moses had a stuttering problem, and he had issues with his own self-esteem and self-worth is a major issue in this country right now. The whole world's having an identity crisis, which is why we're going through all this other all this other stuff. Like, I don't know who I am, and we have a school in Pennsylvania that is having these children represent themselves as cats, which is bizarre. But why are we having an identity crisis all of a sudden as an entire world? Why?
Well, we know why.
We didn't,
we know why.
But identity crisis was real.
Yeah.
Moses, when he was asked to be Moses, and said, I can't do
Right.
this.
He was like, not me, son.
I can't speak to all these people and do this. No way. Who am I? I'm nobody. I can't even speak to the man next to me without stuttering and stammering.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get somebody to speak on your behalf. You just tell them what to say. Okay. Deal.
Well,
right?
Miss Mimi, I know you have prior engagements, so we don't want to keep you too much longer, and we definitely want to have you on the show again. because we definitely want to continue this conversation on so many things, because this experience, this really covers a lot of different topics.
Yeah, it really does.
But
exactly.
Before we let you go, is there any last thing you want to say to everybody, or any questions that you want to answer?
So here's the deal. We need to pray for our children. We need to pray for, whenever we're praying, just say a blanket prayer for mental health, for any person who is considering suicide. Just ask for God to touch them, because it's just like we said in the very beginning, it really is the true pandemic. It's something that is affecting this entire world, and it just is not a solution. We need to reach our children. We need to have vessels available to them that they can come and they have a place so that they can feel comfortable, that they can express themselves, that they can be guided properly, and, just really taught how to solve a problem. I mean, these are the same people who can't give change to somebody because they can't figure it out mathematically unless the computer tells them what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is, even just something simple like that is something that has become an issue.
And not to get too sidetracked, but I get angry at older people that pick on the younger kids for that.
Yes.
Because I say, well, whose fault is that?
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's not their fault. Obviously, that's a failure on the older people's fault and the educational system.
Absolutely. 100%. 100%.
But sorry, go on.
No, I'm with you 100%. I agree. I used to and I taught my kids how to balance a checkbook.
Yeah.
Here's how you balance it. Because although I gave birth to one, I have a lot of kids.
Yeah.
I have a lot of kids. Because I was a daycare teacher. I helped coach. I was team mom. I volunteered at the schools. I was very active in my community. So kids are my thing. I love them. And I have a lot of them. So I make sure to tell them, I don't care what your problem is. You come to me. I don't care what we have to do. I don't care how many curse words we got to say. That doesn't matter to me. Say it. Do it. Let's get it out there. And let's start the healing. And we need to take these kids back. We're gonna stomp on the enemy, and we're gonna take these kids back. These are God's babies that we're saving.
Right.
Yeah.
Amen, Mimi.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
These are God's babies, and He's put that onus is on all of us Christians to do what we can, no matter how little that is. It could be a hug. It could be a smile.
Absolutely.
Right.
It doesn't matter what it is. You have no idea what kind of change you can make. So make that ripple.
We're living in a very broken world, and even just as much as a smile to somebody could light their whole day. That's why I thought about that the one day I was walking past somebody, and I was at the grocery store, and I was waiting to cross the aisle, and this one lady was in front of me, blocking me, but she didn't realize that I was even there. And then I had like this serious look on my face, and she looked at me, and then I cracked a big smile. And then she said, and she just kind of she smiled and almost giggled.
Yeah.
And it's like I could tell that smile made her day. Yeah. And she thanked me for letting her go before me.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But I never saw such a joyous smile before. That smile just melted her heart.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
That was a very Christ-like smile. It's the best way I could describe it.
Absolutely. So I do want to share something that is very near and dear to me. I was raised in a Catholic environment, okay? And I personally, and this is not to put down anyone in any way, shape, or form, personally, I've stepped away from Catholicism because as an adult, I made a choice. The reasons for that choice are not important. I made a choice. Mm-hmm. And I gave my life to Christ in my late 20s, and, that's just my choice. So But what I will share is that my mother, who I consider to be one of the greatest human beings I've ever known in my life, because I honestly never met anyone like her, and her sister, who was my other mother, basically, who walked Jesus, who talked Jesus, and lived their lives that way. Everything they did, everything. And they went, my mother went through some serious tough times, really tough. She never left her marriage. She could have. There were some really, really bad times. Biblically, she would have been totally fine to do so. She felt that it was put on her heart when she prayed that she stay. She definitely was a guiding force for me in my faith. She was my mentor, my original mentor. And she actually, one of the things that, we were poor. My mother stayed home and raised us, and there were 7 of us. I'm the baby. My father worked at the Bethlehem Steel, and he worked a lot. We hardly ever saw him, but he was constantly working. And she took care of us. And she had us go through 12 years of Catholic school. In that experience, we had to, and we were forced to do it, but you didn't feel like you were forced to do it. It was just a way of life. We would work at the church. We would work at the school in the summer, all year round, whatever it was. And my father was very handy, so he would go in and he would paint, he would repair things, he would do whatever it took, and he would do that for nothing. But what they ended up doing was they would put that money towards our tuition because it was very expensive, right? So when I say community, that's what I'm talking about. We had community. Yeah. My mom had one son who had spina bifida, and there were times that we didn't have all the hospitals that we have now, and he was born in 1958. So he when he would get sick, there wasn't a hospital in our area that would even take him. So they had to go to St. Christopher's in Philadelphia. So no matter what happened, they had to find someone to take care of the kids, hop in the car, and drive him all the way to Philly, which in 1958 was not that easy as it is now. And they would have to go and get there. And if they couldn't find anyone to take care of the kids, they would have to throw the kids in the car, stop at the convent next to St. Christopher's, drop all the kids off with the nuns, and then go to the hospital. So can you even imagine this? Like, this is insane, right? So, but what was amazing was the whole community came together. Right. They could call somebody at 3 a.m. and go, I need somebody to come stay with my kids. Yeah, I have to take Tommy, and that's what we have at my church with Leah. That's what we have. We have that. We have that community. We have that, you're down. All right, we're not just going to pray. We're going to do. What do you need?
Yeah, very awesome. True. It's a small church, but man, do they genuinely care and love.
Yes.
Yes.
And the church needs a paint job. The church needs this. The church who's here that can help us? We'll do it. Let's do it. And we do these things together. And this makes God smile. That's walking Jesus.
That reminds me of the book of Acts when the believers, they all came together as a community. Those who had more gave to those who had less, and
shared
everyone they shared everything, and everyone, no one was in need of anything.
Exactly. And and even for the secular world, there's a story called Stone Soup. Have you guys ever heard of that?
Yes.
And a stranger comes to town and he says, I'm hungry. He goes, but all I have is this stone, and no one will come out. And they put this stone in boiling water. And then so-and-so says, well, I have carrots. And so-and-so, the other person says, well, I have potatoes. And then they end up with this feast, and they all come out and they come together. Right. And it's a secular story, but still in all, it's a way for us to kind of teach. This is what Jesus is showing us. This is exactly what we are to do. And these are the things that our children are missing out on.
Yeah.
Something
Very
so
true.
small. That very small thing. And even when we have our youth services, I love it because some of the kids, all they can do is hold up a sign that says, I'm glad you're here today. And you know what? That's okay. If that's your only job, you just do that job. Do that with a smile and hold that up so that when the people come to walk into the church, they see that sign that says, we're glad you came today.
Yeah.
I mean, they're giving back to their community.
And now more than ever, we're going to need that community.
Yes.
As we start entering into harder and harder times, spiritually, economically, and financially, we're going to have no choice but to live by faith and to rely on one another. That's why I started organizing the group in my father's house, and I even use the verses from the book of Acts as the mantra of the group. We need to develop and organize these communities, because we're going to need each other.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's funny. I have these dreams all the time, and I don't know what they mean. I have no idea, but I do. I have dreams of a house, and in that house, it's my house, and it's just filled with children. And all we're doing is, cleaning and, playing games and doing whatever and like building this home. And I don't know what that means. I don't know if that's God speaking to me in some capacity about something. I just don't know what it means.
Right. I love that, Mimi. I would think so. I would think God's saying something. I mean,
it's a beautiful vision. I get it quite often. And I know there's something to it. I just don't know what it is. But I'm willing to wait on my Father and see what that means and see what that entails. But I think community, coming together, doing little things, showing our kids how, hey, I'm going down to the church. I'm going to go help mow the lawn and pull the weeds. Why don't you come with me and help me? You could do that too. You could help pull some weeds.
And all the teenagers say, no.
Exactly. But it's amazing. But see, that's the thing. The teenagers do say no, but who makes them go? Who makes them go anyway? And I can tell you that my son, I did make him go, and he used to yell at me. He's like, "You're the worst," and this is all in teasing. He was like, "You're the worst mom. Why do you make me do these things?" And and he would always get upset with me. But at the same time, that very same person, I remember the one day we were sitting in our apartment, and I was cooking and just kind of running around, and he was just sitting on the couch doing something, and he looked out and he quick jumped up, like he really real quick jumped up, ran right out the door, and I'm like, what happened? Like, what just happened? And so I go to look outside. He ran out because there was one of our neighbors who was probably in like their 60s or 70s, not and very healthy and fine, but they had a bunch of groceries. He just ran up right behind them, grabbed all the groceries out of the car, took them right up to their door, and just waited for them to come in.
Oh, wow.
That's great.
So these are the things that, and he did that because, now again, he was also raised by my mother. He was touched by that as well. So he saw my mother and father do that, and then he saw me do that.
Right.
And what he used to always say to me is, he was like, we started this mantra, him and I, and I'm very happy to say that the night that he left on August 12th, we did this, because we did this always, always, always when we left each other. We would always give each other a hug. We would always say, I love you. And then we would always say, wherever you go, I go. Right? And that was our always our mantra. We always said it, and we'd always kind of giggle and, say whatever. And then off we would go. And but if we got into something, if there was something going on, I'm like, you're not going anywhere till this is resolved.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we're not leaving this. And so I was very headstrong about that. And he started living his life like that, but he was touched by the same woman, which is my mother. And it was leading by example, being that mentor, living it, and saying, this is how you got to live your life. And, if this is what you want. And my mom had it tough. She had it tough. She could have easily, at many points in her life, chosen suicide. Her mother was on her deathbed in my house. And her own mother would not say, I love you.
Wow.
And my mother uprooted her whole home to take care of her until she died. And we all took care of Nana until she took her last breath. And she would not. She treated my mother very, very differently and not in a nice way. And she refused. And my aunt was saying, would you please tell Rosemarie that you love her? And she goes, no. Wow. And that woman left this world saying that.
Wow.
Yeah. And you know what? My mother said, that's okay, Mom, I love you.
Yeah, that's good.
That's walking Jesus.
Right.
That's walking Jesus. So this is why I'm saying, and we need to be that too. And we can't always. My mom messed up. I'm not trying to draw a picture that she was perfect. Trust me, she was not.
Yeah, of course not.
None of us.
Yeah,
she was
none
not.
of us are.
Yeah. So, but here's another act of God that I find truly astounding. So, when my mother in 1960, my mother became pregnant again. And she was pregnant with my brother, Spud. And I told you about Tommy, who had spina bifida and was born in 1958. So in October of 1960, my brother was born. In December, this is October 27th, on December 8th of 1960, my brother Tommy died in my mother's arms.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So now my mother knows what it's like to lose a child, right?
Yeah.
She had 2 miscarriages. She lost a child as a 2-year-old. Now let's fast forward to my oldest sibling, George, dies at the age of 52 from cancer. Devastates my whole family, right? My whole family is shook because this just, it happened very quickly, okay? And she loses her second child, well, 4th technically, right? So on the night that George passed, at this point my parents were older. My mother's Alzheimer's was beginning. My father had Parkinson's, and their health was just at the point of beginning a decline. The stress of my brother's death had a huge effect on their health. But I remember when I found out, and I wasn't there when my brother passed. He was with his children and his wife. And I got the phone call, and I said, okay, I'm going to get JJ up, and I'm going to Mom's. So I drove to my parents to go tell them, and my brother Bart was there waiting for me, waiting outside. He said, we'll do this together. I said, okay. So we went in and woke up my parents to tell them. And, obviously it was a very devastating day. And all of us were shook. It was pretty rough. So then what ends up happening is my mother and I, who were very close, really spoke in detail about losing a child. And she would open up to me and talk to me about it. And she shared with me, because I asked her exactly what you guys asked me. Mom, how did you do this?
Yeah.
And my mother said that after she lost Tommy and had a newborn to take care of, the doctors just handed her piles of pills. And they said, here, you got to take these pills. These are going to take all the emotions away and you can get through it.
Oh, wow.
And that was their answer.
That's some counseling, right?
Right.
Oh,
Did we just lose her?
Did we lose you?
I don't know.
I think we might have lost Miss Mimi, which is strange because the phone is still showing a connection.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are.
Oh.
Somehow my mute button went on. I'm sorry.
Oh.
I apologize for
No,
that.
that's okay.
That's okay.
So she was told to take these pills. So, of course, all right, we'll take the pills. Well, she's like, I can't afford these pills. I can't do this. I have a child to take care of. I have all these other children. I have a house to run. I have all this stuff. I can't do this. So, guess what she did? Any guesses?
Dumped them out.
She threw away the pills, got on her knees, lifted her hands.
Yeah.
And then all those years later, when her son George passed at the age of 52,
Yeah.
she got on her knees, she lifted her hands, and she gave it to God. And she struggled, and she talked to me about it. She went to her church. I'm the only one in her family that she spoke openly with about her struggles with it. Okay, now I might also be one of the only ones who really asked her a lot of questions as well and really wanted to know. But here's what's so great. God knows all of it. He knows what's going to happen in the future. He knows. We don't know. Certainly my mother had no idea that out of all of her children, I was going to be the only one that lost a child.
Yeah.
But yet I'm the only one she spoke to about it.
And going back to the doctor's response to her about coping with her son's passing was a bottle of pills. That's
and
like
that was in 1960.
And that's today's culture. That's their response to dealing with things. Look how they're pushing the medical marijuana card. I mean, so many people got it now, and they're in the name of anxiety. They're choosing this. This is their Jesus. Mm-hmm. Their God.
That's exactly right.
They're taking and they're doping themselves up.
Absolutely.
And it's turning society into a bunch of walking zombies.
Absolutely.
Which is exactly what the enemy wants.
Exactly.
It makes us weak and useless. We're basically just walking shells, if we're all doped up and not in our sober minds.
And then we can't, when they're like that, they're so hard to reach.
Yeah.
Because
and they can't reach anybody.
Their mind is numb.
Right. Yeah.
So they're not feeling an emotion, the conviction, because, once you've really been touched by Jesus and you've chosen him as your savior, you know what conviction is, right? So you know that when you go into a church service and you haven't been there in a while and you're feeling a certain kind of way, it's because God's speaking to you, and he's talking to you and he's saying, look, I want you back.
Yeah.
Come on back. I want you back. And that's what that is. Like, that's that, little tinge that's saying, come on. And we've all been there. We've all had it. Mm-hmm. And, because it's just part of our walk. It's part of what we go through. And, it just is amazing to me that with all the drugs and all that, they're not feeling it, which is why they keep doing it, because that takes that away.
And it's a form of idolatry.
Absolutely.
When it becomes they're reaching out to this marijuana as their God.
Absolutely.
To fix their problems. And that fits the description of idolatry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Which, honestly, I'm going to tell you, brings up another subject. I had to fight, and I didn't realize this, but my son's death became idolatry.
Yeah.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Oh, sure.
So that became my identity. That became everything. This is what everything is about now. Everything goes back to this, and that became idolatry. And it was part of my valley when I was, on my walking through my wilderness and really kind of, hitting my peaks and valleys. It was absolutely part of it.
Well, the enemy's very sneaky. It's a lot of times when we think of idolatry, we think of like the golden calves and people offering sacrifices to the altar of like Zeus or some other foreign god. But it can be as simple as just putting something in before God.
Right.
No matter what it is.
All your energy.
Yes.
Everything you do, all of your energy, whatever you're focused 100% on,
is about
that's all
that.
you're on.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what you're idolizing. That's what you are spending your idolatry in.
Sure.
And I was fooled. I didn't see it, and God showed it to me. And when I saw it, I was like, "Whoa!"
It's something, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it is. It is. He's amazing, though. If you really open your heart to having that relationship, and Leah and I have talked about this, where you just sit quietly.
Yeah.
Maybe have some soft music on in the background, and just pray to Him. Say, Lord, just speak to me, and just spend some time with me. Our pastor's wife, Bobby, actually said to me, to a bunch of us at one of our prayer meetings, she said, if you ever ask God to just hold you, and I was like, no, no, I didn't. And I said, but I'm going to now. That sounds kind of cool. And I did. And you literally feel it. And it is a very comforting, wonderful feeling. If you're open to it,
right,
and you will just allow that to envelop you, it's a beautiful feeling. It's having, like I said, my mother, my parents were very good to me, and I absolutely loved my parents, and they were very loving and kind to me, and that was something that got you through, when you're especially when you're little. It's like, my brothers are picking on me, and they're just big jerk faces, and I don't like them anymore. And, you're crying because they're being horrible. And then Dad's like, come here. And he just grabs you and puts you up on his lap and hugs you. And you just feel like you're in the safest place in the world.
Yeah. And that's, we have a very personal God that wants a very personal relationship with us.
Right.
He wants us to look at Him like Daddy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like He's our parent. And that's what's very distinct about Jesus Christ. When it comes to all the gods in the world, there is no God like Him.
Right.
Because
Absolutely.
no other God seeks that kind of a relationship with their followers.
Right.
Exactly. And no other God says, I'm going to give you free will to either be with me or don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Miss Mimi.
Yeah, Mimi, we
really have to
want to
run.
respect
I'm
your
so
time.
No, it's okay. This is great.
But we definitely want you back on. You are just a wealth of knowledge and information.
And I feel like we could go over so many topics with her.
This Nini, we could keep you on the phone for hours, and I would not complain.
Yeah.
But we definitely we want to have you back on, though.
Anytime.
Thank you so much for blessing us.
Number,
yes.
So you tell me when, and I'm there.
Mimi, thank you so much.
You're
such
so
a blessing,
Yes.
Mimi.
And
Thank you.
keep
guys
doing
have
what
been
you're
wonderful.
doing.
This has been healing for me as well.
Oh,
so
great.
Thank you.
Yes.
Great.
Love you, Mimi.
I love you too. Take care.
All
You
right,
too.
you too. Bye.
God bless.
Bye.
Bye-bye.